What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Scott Proctor alongside my guy Matt Morris per usual. We're back with another episode of Simple Question. This time we got a special guest joining us for the first time, a Broncos insider at KOA, Colorado, Benjamin Allbright. How are you doing, my man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Let's hop right into things. There's plenty to talk about. We have to start, obviously, with the biggest news of the Broncos offseason, obviously trading for Russell Wilson. And I want to ask it this way. The Broncos pulled off something similar not too long ago. They brought in a former Super Bowl winning quarterback in Peyton Manning after an injury-riddled season. Obviously, Manning's neck injury at the time is much more serious than the finger injury Russell was dealing with last season. But, they're both brought in to take this franchise to the next level. Obviously, Manning and the Broncos went on to win 12-plus games in 3 straight seasons before winning a Super Bowl. How similar are these two situations, and is it fair to expect kind of the same level of success that Manning brought to the Broncos?
I don't think it's fair necessarily to assume the same standard right off the bat. I mean, 2 Super Bowls in 4 or 5 years, that's a pretty tough ask of anybody. But I mean, the Broncos certainly expect to be more competitive. I mean, you got Russell Wilson in a team that was already pretty good. They had a number 3 defense last year. They've got a very young, what they consider exciting offense, and certainly the best offensive line that Russell Wilson has ever seen and played behind, at least in the pro game. So that should be helpful. I think the standard is set at making the playoffs and compete for Super Bowls, and I think that's probably where it needs to be. Everybody has their own idea of what the standard is, but I think that's kind of the team standard. In terms of, are the situations similar? I mean, there's some differences. Peyton Manning was obviously came in via free agency. Russ was traded for. So the Broncos aren't going to have those first and second round picks to try to replenish where they need to. That's going to be a hurdle that they're going to have to deal with. But overall, I'd say there are some similarities. Certainly, you've got a young offense with a pedigreed quarterback coming in. You've got a defense that's fairly ready built. They didn't really have that when Peyton came in, but they had a defensive guy running the show in John Fox. Now you've got an offensive guy, Nathaniel Hackett. So, few differences, few similarities. We'll see if it works out the same.
Yeah, and Benjamin, you talked about reloading or replenishing some of the spots that they might need to. Do you see them making any more moves, or what are the positions in the areas that they're going to look to address, while free agency still goes on and maybe during the draft as well?
I don't think they're going to be too busy in free agency. They added back Kareem Jackson yesterday, but that was only because he leveraged him with an offer from the Steelers. And I'm not even sure Kareem's going to make the 53. He fell off quite a bit last year. So if he does, it'll be on kind of a hybrid role. They'll probably move him back into the kind of the slot. He would be the second slot corner, a rotational safety, that kind of thing. I don't see him as a too high safety. I think Caden Stearns is going to take that role, and I just don't think Kareem has it anymore to be able to cover that much ground. So, we'll kind of see with that. Bryce Callahan may come back, but I think Kareem re-signing kind of nixed that. You may bring Melvin Gordon back, but I talked to Melvin. I mean, he's my neighbor, so I talked to Melvin. I don't think he believes he's coming back. I think he wants to be back. I don't think he believes he's coming back. Just economic reality of the game, So I don't think the Broncos going to be too active in free agency. In the draft, you're probably looking at a right tackle, a couple of edge guys, a running back, another corner, and then, it just depends. Probably a developmental quarterback as well.
Benjamin, I didn't plan on asking this, but you mentioned Melvin Gordon, and I feel compelled to ask it now. Javonte Williams obviously had a hell of a rookie season at running back, showed some real flashes of being, somewhat of a, every down back, somebody that you can build almost an offense around. What did you see from him during his rookie season? And what's kind of the feeling around the franchise, about his prospects moving forward as a pretty damn good running back?
Well, they like him a lot. There's still some things he needs to learn. One of those is he struggled a little bit in short yardage type stuff. I mean, you're talking about a guy who led the NFL in 0 and negative yardage carries on a per carry basis. And while he had the big exciting runs where he's ripping it off and breaking tackles, there were some vision things that Melvin Gordon, I think, was better at when they needed him situationally. And so I think he's got to learn.
Because it seemed like Melvin Gordon got a lot of those kind of like short yardage goal line carries when it seems almost like Williams would be built for that kind of role almost.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think it's a vision thing because, Melvin was always good for falling forward for positive yardage. And with Davante, he had those sexy runs that made all the highlight reels, but what they didn't show was the 0, 0, 1, -1, -2, carries and stuff like that. I think he runs with such force that I think that he sometimes passes on the vision, component. They're going to be running outside zone this year instead of power gap like they were last year. So that's going to present a little bit of a different challenge. He just needs to be kind of a one-cut guy and go. That may favor him. And so I think they expect big things out of him going forward, but there are some things he does need to clean up that kind of got lost in the fact that everybody was kind of engrossed in those big highlight runs.
I mean, and not just Javonte Williams, but you talked about this young receiving core that's pretty exciting now. Everybody was excited about them when you had Drew Lock throwing the ball to them. What do you expect out of this group now that you have Russell Wilson, a very veteran guy, and can we see Jeudy and Sutton and those guys take it to a whole nother level, even though they've already been pretty impressive?
Well, that's the hope. I mean, Drew, for all the bashing people do about Drew was pretty good at times. There was just a lot of boneheaded stuff in there too. It couldn't be consistent. And I think that's the thing with Russ, you know what you're getting, and it's going to be consistent. And I think that will help out. Jerry Jeudy gets a little frustrated when he doesn't get the ball. I think it wasn't necessarily Drew Lock either. Like the last offensive coordinator was just a joke. Pat Shurmur was terrible. He and I got into a verbal altercation in the hallways because I kept calling him Punch Shurmur, and he didn't like that too much. So I mean, Pat Shurmur was not a collaborative person, and these receivers knew what was working and what wasn't. And they even went to him and said, "Hey, look, this didn't work, and here's some things we could do." And he just flat out told them, "I'm the coach, you're the players, go out and execute, and it'll work." And so that didn't go over well. So I think the combination of Russ and a collaborator like Nathaniel Hackett really will help this young receiving core. I mean, Patrick doesn't drop anything. Sutton's got a catch radius from here to the moon. Jerry Jeudy is one of the better route runners in the league already. KJ Hamler's got all kinds of speed if he can stay healthy, and I think the world's about to know who Albert Okwuegbunam is. So,
no doubt about it, and that's interesting stuff about Shurmur because I'm so high on Courtland Sutton. These guys can vouch. Before the season, I thought he was primed for a breakout year, and he showed flashes, but there were just too many times where there were 0 targets, 2 targets a game, and that's just unacceptable for somebody with his caliber. But you also mentioned somebody I wanted to ask you about, and that's Nathaniel Hackett, obviously the Broncos' new head coach. I was a little bit taken aback by the hire. It wasn't my favorite hire of this coaching cycle, but I'm curious your thoughts on, how you envision Hackett kind of fitting in Denver, and how you kind of see his dynamic with Russell Wilson working out.
Well, Hackett's he's a high energy guy, and he's a collaborator, and get to hang out with him a little bit at the combine and stuff. And man, I'll tell you, that guy, wow, all kinds of energy. We were shutting places down, and this dude's up for interviews at 8 a.m. where I'm dragging behind. So being next to that dude is like drinking a Red Bull. I think that he'll work with this younger team. I think that his energy will be infectious as far as that kind of stuff goes. The question isn't, is Nathaniel Hackett going to relate better to these guys? The question is, can Nathaniel Hackett coach? That's the question.
Exactly.
And so that's really where this whole thing boils down to is how much of what it is that he's going to do is lifted from what he got from Matt LaFleur. How much of this is going to be what Russ Wilson wants to do? How much of this is going to be what Nathaniel Hackett originally did when he was an offensive coordinator running the K-gun? Because what they did in Green Bay, where he didn't call plays, is nothing like what he did before in Jacksonville and Buffalo, where again he was running old K-gun stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see. His daddy was a head coach, obviously, so he's got that to rely on. But Paul Hackett. But I think the question isn't, is Nathaniel Hackett ready for this? Good for the players, all that. The question is, can he handle the minutia, the day-to-day of being a head coach?
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been talking a lot about the offense because obviously that's been the exciting stuff. But one of the I love the Randy Gregory signing, the ability that you guys were able to the Denver Broncos were able to sneak out and get him away from Dallas. How important was that to, like you said, an already impressive Denver defense and adding one of those guys that once again can go after the quarterback in a division where it's going to be pretty vital to get to the quarterback before he can, throw a touchdown, presumably.
Yeah, they desperately needed another edge rusher. Bradley Chubb didn't have a sack last year. They traded away Von Miller. Malik Reed is just kind of a guy, more of a rotational guy. Jonathan Cooper was a 7th rounder. He struggles to set the edge in the run game. They really needed that. And I think Randy Gregory is going to be a good addition. There are a lot of people talking about it being a risky signing, but with the new CBA rules, he's max suspension he's up for is like 3 games. He's never been in trouble with the law. It's always been marijuana stuff. That's all becoming legal, and they're dropping the testing for it. So I don't think it's a risky move as far as that goes. Maybe if he can't stay healthy, maybe, but I think, and he just had a shoulder scope. So, but I think overall, I think it's a good signing. I like this defense. It's going to be a different style of defense this year with the Jiro Evero run the defense. Vic Fangio runs kind of a cover 4 quarters match, bend, don't break a defense. And Jiro Evero is going to be attacking more. Vic Fangio wanted to send the least amount of people at the quarterback he had to and drop everybody else back. But Jiro Evero will get creative and start sending guys downhill. It's just, it's kind of in between Wade Phillips's send everything at the quarterback and Vic Fangio's send nothing at the quarterback. Jiro Evero kind of has a balance in between there. So I think they'll be more of a 2-high team this year. I think they'll be more of a nickel 2 deep man under team than a 3-4. I think you're going to see a lot more. You'll see some underfronts and stuff like that, but I really do think you're going to see more of a traditional 4 down lineman look than what you got with Vic Fangio. We'll see. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that, but every indicator based on the personnel they've signed so far kind of makes it look that way.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Ben, probably the last question we got for you. Obviously, the AFC West is overtaking the NFC West is the best, toughest division in football. I obviously think that the Chiefs should still be the favorite despite losing Tyreek Hill with the best quarterback in football. Obviously, the Chargers have had a hell of an offseason, and the Raiders were a playoff team last year, and they presumably got better with the addition of Davante Adams. How do you envision the Broncos kind of falling in the toughest division in football and, really in the AFC as a whole at season's end?
Well, it is a tough division. It's tough to call right now because Kansas City's defense is really kind of falling apart. It's going to be interesting to see just how much of the load Pat Mahomes can shoulder there. The Raiders still don't have much of a defense. They did add Chandler Jones. They've got a little bit of a pass rush, but the rest of their defense is just kind of bleh. It's going to be interesting to see what Josh McDaniels does there. Chargers, everybody likes them on paper. I don't know. They find a way to Charger though, man. Like they find a way to fall apart. I've loved the Chargers for a long time. I keep watching them, and then I'm like, man, I don't know what it is about that team, but there's a curse. So you look around the division, and I think it's anybody's division. I think you got to put Kansas City at the top simply by virtue of Pat Mahomes. I put Denver in second, the Chargers third, and the Raiders last. I wouldn't be surprised if I was totally wrong and totally backwards, though. I mean, it's that up for grabs.
Seriously, no, that makes a lot of sense. But this is awesome stuff. Hey, Benjamin, thanks so much for your insight. Go follow Benjamin and all his work on Twitter. But that's going to do it for us for another episode of Simple Question. For Scott Proctor, Matt Morris, and Benjamin Allbright, we'll catch you on the next episode of Simple Question.